Revenge with Karen.
I knew I was invisible when the CEO called me Rebecca in front of the whole damn finance team, third time that month. I've been at that company for 7 years. 7. I've fixed quarterly reports that could have sunk us, flagged international transfers that screamed money laundering louder than a yacht in Dubai, and once caught a spreadsheet error that saved the CFO from having to explain a $14 million miscategorization to the board. And yet, Rebecca, like I was a Starbucks order he forgot 5 seconds after handing it off. That's the kind of place this was, where your value wasn't in what you did, it was in how loud you could bullshit during all-hands meetings. My job title was compliance analyst, but what that really meant was I played janitor for executive messes. If someone accidentally deleted a vendor invoice for the third time, I found the backup. When a partner flagged us for suspicious payment terms, I redlined the contract like my life depended on it. Spoiler, it kind of did. Every time the company flirted with collapse due to its own hubris, I was there with duct tape and plausible deniability. Not that anyone said thank you. They just handed me another stack of red flags and told me to be a team player. God, I hated that phrase. Be a team player was HR's code for shut up and swallow it. When I flagged a backdated sales agreement last spring and my manager, Tom, whose only real skill was mimicking human expressions, smiled and said, "You're thinking too rigidly, Rachel. This is a dynamic environment." That same week, he got a bonus. I got a development plan suggesting I work on my attitude, so I stopped trying to be the good soldier. I still did my job, hell, I did it better than anyone, but I did it on autopilot. Eyes open, ears sharp. Because if there's one thing this company taught me, it's that no one's coming to save you. You either learn how to protect yourself, or you end up crying in a WeWork bathroom while your manager pretends to care for exactly 3.5 seconds. Still, day after day, I showed up, sat at my desk, cleared out the inbox fire swamp, listened to finance and legal argue over semantics while someone in sales committed another light felony on Slack. It was like working inside a malfunctioning vending machine. You know it's broken, but you keep jamming your hand in, hoping this time it'll give you what you paid for. Oh, and quick sidebar, since you're already here. If you like these kinds of stories, where corporate karma finally shows up and bites back, hit that follow and like button. It helps way more than you think, and no one on the team wants to go back to pretending we enjoy status update meetings. Okay, back to the mess. What made it worse was, I wasn't even bitter in the beginning. I used to believe in the mission. Democratize access to capital, they said. Empower small businesses, they promised. But somewhere along the way, that turned into inflate user metrics before Series D and cook the books just enough to pass an audit. I saw the shift like a cold front blowing in, slow, steady, chilling. The new leadership team was all noise, empty slogans. Growth hack this, optimize that. They stopped caring about customers and started caring about headlines. IPO buzz, founder podcasts, lunch with influencers. Meanwhile, the actual infrastructure, the legal and compliance underbelly, was held together by 3 underpaid analysts and hope. And yet I stayed, because I thought maybe I could steer the ship. Maybe if I held the line, someone up top would notice and say, "Hey, this Rachel woman knows her stuff." But no one ever did. Instead, I got looped into crisis calls with no context, handed impossible deadlines, and my personal favorite, blamed when someone else dropped the ball. One time, a VP forgot to file a vendor certification, and legal tried to pin it on me. Wasn't she looped? They asked. I wasn't. I had email proof, no apology, just silence and the next mess waiting in my inbox. The thing is, I wasn't angry, not then. I was exhausted, numb. Being in a long-term relationship with someone who doesn't hit you, doesn't cheat, doesn't scream, but still makes you feel like a ghost in your own house. That's what working there felt like, a slow disappearance. Each day, a little more of myself eroded. Each spreadsheet I doctored on someone else's orders chipped away at my integrity. Each lie I had to quietly ignore for the sake of optics tightened a belt around my conscience. But I knew the system. I knew every access point, every buried folder, every redundant archive no one else remembered existed. I didn't have power, but I had eyes. And eventually, I stopped deleting what I saw. I started saving it. They thought I was a nobody. But I was the one holding the plunger to their clogged pipeline of fraud. And the toilet was about to flush. The new exec team rolled in like a tornado of jargon and overpriced loafers, fresh off some VC darling's failed crypto platform. They hit the ground running with a single strategy: inflate everything. Growth at any cost, they called it. I called it red flag bingo. They started slashing ops budgets while doubling the marketing spend, axing risk reviews in favor of momentum, and turning our internal dashboards into a hall of mirrors. 1 week into their reign, they killed the compliance committee outright, said it was duplicative with finance oversight. That's when I knew this wasn't about scaling. It was about speedrunning the company into a news headline before the truth could catch up. I tried to tell myself I was overreacting, that maybe these guys had a plan, that maybe, just maybe, they weren't complete lunatics with a god complex and a burner phone full of Cayman Islands contacts. But then I got a routine request from Tom. Rachel, mind giving these Q3 reports a once-over before we send them to the board? Sure, Tom. Happy to keep pretending we're a real company. I opened the report expecting the usual garbage, vague projections, inflated user growth, and a desperate amount of footnotes. But something stuck out like a pair of Crocs at a funeral. A line item under enterprise revenue was repeated, verbatim, in 3 different departments. Same number, down to the decimal, $2,486,713.19. Once under SMB accounts, once under international expansion, and again under government partnerships. That was a new level of lazy. I highlighted all 3 and pinged Tom. Hey, notice this number's showing up multiple times. Is that a placeholder? He replied with a thumbs-up emoji, followed by, just a rounding error winking face, you're not the IRS. Right, I'm just the poor schmuck whose name goes on the review stamp. Still, I didn't press. I knew how this game worked. If you call out too much too fast, they label you not a team player. The same way they call a layoff a strategic reset and stock options golden handcuffs, even though they're expired cheddar in a plastic wrapper. Instead, I started a new habit. Every time I reviewed a report that didn't smell right, every time a payment date didn't match an invoice, or a contractor's name looked suspiciously similar to a board member's cousin, I saved a copy. Quietly, cleanly, tucked away in an encrypted folder on a personal drive they didn't know existed. And yeah, I know what you're thinking. Why didn't you say something sooner? Trust me, I did. Once. I flagged an expense report that showed $34,000 in client dinners, all charged at the same steakhouse in Miami over 3 days. The receipts were all for one table. Tom laughed and said, "Guess they really like surf and turf." Then he closed the ticket. So no, I wasn't about to waste my breath again. I wasn't the IRS, but I knew damn well that wasn't a rounding error. That was fraud dressed in a suit and sprinkled with truffle salt. The deeper I looked, the more bizarre it got. 1 week later, a vendor I'd never seen before popped up in the payroll logs. Shift Works Consulting. We're billing $80,000 for operational scalability audits. Except there was no contract, no tax ID, and the contact email was a Proton Mail account with 0 signature. When I brought that up, radio silence. That's when it really hit me. This wasn't incompetence. This was intentional. They weren't just ignoring the rules, they were betting no one would enforce them. And maybe they were right. Who was going to blow the whistle? Guy from legal who spent most of his day playing golf with our COO. The new girl in finance who still thought stock dilution meant watering down our cafeteria soda. No, it was going to have to be someone invisible. Someone who'd already been written off. Someone like me, so I kept saving. Not just reports. I saved internal chat logs, email threads, PDF contracts that mysteriously got overwritten, even Slack messages that expired after 30 days. I found a way to screen capture them before they vanished. I started running searches in our document archive late at night, under the radar. I wasn't looking for a smoking gun. I was building a damn armory. The worst part? I didn't even want revenge. Not then. I just wanted it to stop. I wanted to work for a company that didn't make me feel like a co-conspirator every time I logged into the shared drive. Deep down, I already knew. They weren't going to change. They weren't going to stop, so I did. I stopped pretending I was part of the team and started preparing to blow the whole thing up. The invoice came in on a Tuesday morning, buried beneath a stack of NDA renewals and onboarding packets for some new contractor team based out of nowhere, apparently. The sender was Core Scale Analytics, which I vaguely remembered approving 6 months earlier for a pilot data visualization tool. One-time project. 3-month cap. C-suite loved the demo, hated the bill, and ghosted the vendor into oblivion, or so I thought. Except now, Here was CoreScale again, billing $127,000 for Q2 analytics recalibration under the exact same contract number I had archived as closed. And guess what? Right next to it in the system was another charge. Same vendor, same amount, same line item, filed under a different department code. One from marketing, one from product, 2 charges, 1 service, no explanation. So, like a rational human being who hasn't yet drowned in corporate Kool-Aid, I emailed finance. Hey, I wrote, noticed CoreScale submitted what appears to be a duplicate invoice under 2 departments. You confirm this isn't an error before I approve. About 10 minutes later, I got a response from some middle manager I barely knew named Lance, who, judging by his profile pic, had strong I just discovered cigars and Bitcoin in the same weekend energy. His entire reply, stay in your lane, Rachel. No greeting, no signature, no emoji, just that. I sat there staring at the screen, fingers hovering over the keyboard like maybe, just maybe, I was dreaming. Nope, this was real. This was the kind of place we'd become. A compliance analyst asking a clarifying question about a 6-figure duplicate payment gets told to shut up like she just asked to see someone's tax returns at Thanksgiving. I didn't reply. Not right away. Instead, I got up, took a lap around the floor, and tried to remember how I got here in the first place. I used to love this job, used to feel like I was doing something that mattered. We were building something real. Now it felt like I was babysitting a bonfire made of money and lies. On my way back to my desk, I passed Jim, my old mentor, used to be head of regulatory affairs before the new exec team shoved him into a corner office with no responsibilities and a slowly expiring title. He looked tired, like the kind of tired that caffeine can't touch. You look like you saw a ghost, he murmured when I sat back down. I showed him the email from Lance, told him about the duplicate invoice, the vendor, the rubber-stamped contracts, the silence. He leaned in, voice barely above a whisper. Don't ask too many questions, he said. They're prepping for Series D. Everyone's walking on eggshells. Just keep your head down, keep your head down. That phrase felt like a slap. It meant let it happen. It meant protect your job, not the truth. It meant you know what's going on, but pretend you don't. But I wasn't wired for that. Not anymore. That night I went home and didn't even change out of my work clothes. I opened my laptop, sat at my kitchen table, and started Googling. Not for vendors, not for contracts, for whistleblower laws. Turns out there's a whole lot of them. SEC, IRS, OSHA, take your pick. Some even offer protection clauses, anonymity options, financial incentives. Not that I was doing this for the money. If anything, wanted to not need money. I wanted to be free of the whole thing. Of them, I dug deeper. Downloaded PDFs. Read horror stories and success stories. Found forums where ex-employees of shady startups whispered into the void about the things they saw, the risks they took, the retaliation they faced. And I realized something. If I kept trying to fix things from the inside, I'd end up like Jim, benched, bitter, and slowly erased from relevance. Or worse, I'd be complicit. This house of cards finally blew over. They'd pin it on someone like me. The quiet one. The one who should have known. Well, I did know, and now I had a choice. So I created a burner email, just to start, just to dip my toe in. I drafted a timeline of anomalies, created a spreadsheet, God, of course I did, with tabs for each suspicious transaction, vendor, payment delay, and internal message that hinted at fraud. I backed it all up on a thumb drive I stored in an Altoids tin behind the cereal in my pantry. I wasn't ready to hit send yet, but I was close. Too close to turn back, because now I'd seen the monster's face, and it was smiling at me from a glass-walled office upstairs, filing expense reports for steak dinners it never paid for. They told me to stay in my lane. Fine. I was about to pave my own. By the time October rolled around, I wasn't even pretending to play dumb anymore. Every day at that cursed standing desk, because movement boosts productivity, according to the same exec who once expensed a massage chair, I stared straight into the heart of organized manipulation, wearing a fresh coat of corporate PowerPoint. The lies weren't even clever, just brazen, as if we were all frogs and the boiling water was flavored with IPO dreams. It started with vendor addresses. I was combing through departmental ledgers for the Q4 internal audit when I noticed 2 separate vendor contracts, one under marketing, one under product, both listing their remittance office at the same obscure strip mall address in Nevada. A vape shop and a dog groomer. Both vendors were consulting firms, billing 5 figures monthly for strategic engagement frameworks. A few clicks deeper, and I found 4 more. Different names, same address. Most used Gmail or Proton Mail. A few had invoices that were literal screenshots of Word docs. I reverse image searched one of the logos, found it on Shutterstock. Not even edited, and then the wire transfers started looking funny. Buried in the ledger's training and education budget line were recurring international payments to accounts in Malta, Cyprus, and of all places, Kazakhstan. All labeled professional development reimbursements. Curious, since I'd never seen a single employee on those teams attend any training, much less get reimbursed for one. One entry just read, Team Alignment Seminar Baku. There was no Baku seminar. There was no team. Then came the cherry bomb, the file. I wasn't even supposed to see it. Someone had accidentally linked the wrong document in a Slack thread titled Board Prep. It was labeled, unironically, Internal Only Donut Forward V5. XLSX. Of course I clicked it. It opened into a sleek, color-coded earnings forecast sheet. Everything looked polished at first glance. But in the Product Revenue tab, one formula cell had a comment bubble still attached. I hovered over it. It read, plus inflated MRR target by 14% to align W/Series D deck. Fix post-close. That wasn't a mistake. That wasn't a bad input. That was a plan. I sat there, staring at it like it had slapped me. Someone had built the fraud into the formula, and not even tried to hide it. Because why would they? We weren't a company anymore, we were a parade float. Hollow inside, pumped full of helium and waving to VC tourists. That night, I didn't just save the file, I printed it. Physically. Stored it in a folder labeled recipes and slid it into the back of my pantry. I wasn't paranoid, I was done playing defense. And if things went nuclear, wasn't going to rely on Dropbox to back me up. I started organizing everything. Nights and weekends became archive shifts. I cataloged contracts, payment trails, Slack threads, metadata timestamps. I built a nested folder system so detailed it would make a librarian weep. Encrypted drives, duplicate backups, time-stamped screen recordings. I saved emails where execs joked about revenue gymnastics and making that hockey stick curve look sexier. I saved an audio clip from a Zoom call where the CRO laughed and said, if the SEC ever audits us, we're going to have to pretend we don't speak English. All of it went into what I started calling, in my head, the WTF archive. By now, the burner email to the SEC was no longer a draft. I had a thread open with a contact whose name I wasn't allowed to know. I used code names. I answered their questions. I followed their instructions. Every time I uncovered something new, I logged it, filed it, and uploaded a scrubbed copy. This wasn't a diary. This was evidence. I stopped talking to people at work unless I had to, stopped attending culture events. I ghosted every happy hour invite, every team lunch. I was done pretending I was part of something worth saving. Because here's what no one tells you. Corruption doesn't scream. It whispers. It laughs. It shrugs. It calls you dramatic when you catch it in the act. It tells you that's just how the game is played. But I wasn't playing anymore. They thought I was a quiet little compliance drone. What they didn't realize was that my side hustle was now the most organized, damning dossier this company had ever seen. And I was just getting started. They called me in at 10:14 a.m. on a Wednesday, right in the middle of me reviewing a payment trail that connected a vendor in Belize to our head of partnership sisters consulting firm in Florida. The calendar invite just said quick sync HR plus compliance. No subject, no agenda. That's how you know it's never just a sync. I didn't panic. I closed the files, minimized the archive window, tucked my thumb drive into the seam of my boot, and grabbed my mug. The office was extra quiet that day, like it knew something I didn't. When I stepped into HR, 2 people were already seated. Kendra, our HR lead who smiled like she practiced in the mirror, and a guy from legal I'd never seen before, which was a bad sign. Rachel, Kendra said brightly, please have a seat. I sat, took a sip of lukewarm coffee, watched as legal guy slid a file across the table. On top of the folder was a printout, a zoomed-in screenshot of my desktop. More specifically, my private encrypted file manager, open in a window behind a Slack thread. It was blurred and grainy, like it had been snapped from a monitoring tool, or worse, during a remote screen record. Not damning in itself, but just enough to imply suspicious activity. Kendra folded her hands like she was settling into a sermon. We've noticed you've been using your company device for some non-work-related tasks during break periods, she said. Namely, accessing private file storage. Encrypted, no less. She said encrypted like it was a dirty word. I didn't blink. Looks that way, I replied. Legal guy chimed in next. Do you mind explaining the nature of the files? Are you currently freelancing for another organization or seeking employment elsewhere during company hours? And there it was. The trap. They didn't know what I was really doing. But they smelled something they didn't like, and rather than ask what it was, they decided to get rid of it. The company had become allergic to scrutiny. I was an itch they couldn't stop scratching. I stared at the photo for a beat longer, then met their eyes. You got me, I said, plain as day. Kendra blinked. Legal guy raised an eyebrow. Neither expected that. I didn't flail, didn't explain, didn't deny, just you got me. They thought I was freelancing. Job hunting. Maybe gathering dirt for class action lawsuit. Didn't know I'd already sent their cooked books to the SEC in 7 neat batches labeled by quarter, with timestamps, document trails, and internal commentary that made Enron look like a bake sale. But sure, let them think I was moonlighting as a freelance accountant or applying to work at a competitor. It made this part easier for them and cleaner for me. Kendra cleared her throat. Given the breach of our acceptable use policy, the potential conflict of interest, we're terminating your employment effective immediately. I nodded slowly, like I was absorbing a difficult truth. I understand. We'll need your badge, laptop, and any company property, of course. I reached into my bag, pulled out my laptop, factory reset 2 nights ago, after I wiped every trace of my real project and slid it across the table. I unsnapped my badge, set it beside the laptop, and stood. No tears, no outburst, just calm. Kendra was clearly expecting a reaction. Legal guy looked vaguely disappointed, like I'd failed to give him the drama he'd come for. Maybe they'd practiced their lines, prepared for tantrum, an appeal, a last-ditch bargaining plea. Instead, I smiled. Anything else? I asked. No, Kendra said, blinking fast. Someone will escort you to collect your belongings. I already had. Everything personal was in a single paper bag under my desk. I didn't even stop by. Just walked straight to the elevator, down the hallway where faces peered up from cubicles pretending not to watch, and stepped into the silence of the steel box. As the doors closed, I finally let out a breath. This was it, the line. I had played the game to the very edge, but now they thought they'd knocked me off the board. They had no idea. The trap had sprung, but it wasn't for me. Just fired their own compliance officer 5 hours before an SEC case. Investigator was scheduled to request formal documentation of internal financial conduct. I wasn't the one in danger. They were. The air outside felt wrong, too clean, too light. Like the city hadn't gotten the memo that I'd just been executed by a committee of smug faces and half-truths in blazers. I stepped out of that glass tomb they called a headquarters, clutching the brown paper bag with the only 3 things I still had from my time there: a stainless steel thermos, a sticky note with my Wi-Fi password, and a pair of earbuds tangled like the last 7 years of my life. No security guard followed me. No one ran after me to say they'd made a mistake. That only happens in movies where the whistleblower wears makeup and gets a book deal. I took a slow walk down the sidewalk, heels clicking against concrete like punctuation marks. I wasn't rushing. I had nowhere to be except exactly where I wasn't, inside that building. The company laptop, left behind on the HR desk, was cleaner than a newborn's conscience. No personal photos, no browser history, no Slack messages, no drafts. I'd reset everything 3 nights ago, but before I wiped it, I made sure of one last upload, zipped archive named Internal Audit Training Materials Q1, Q3. Inside, tucked 5 folders deep, was a document labeled simply, Forecast Override 2023 Final XLSX. It wasn't even the most damning file. But it was enough to start a breadcrumb trail for the SEC if they needed something more formal than the encrypted uploads I'd already sent. The laptop also had a Chrome extension still installed. When I built myself, silent, invisible, it logged metadata every time someone reopened that file. Timestamps, IPs, user credentials. Just in case anyone decided to retroactively revise their memory. My exit wasn't the end. It was the beginning of the audit log. Back at my apartment, I kicked off my shoes and stood in the kitchen for a full minute, staring at the counter. Not thinking, just pausing. The kind of pause your body demands after 7 years of white-knuckling through fake town halls and empty promises about elevating female voices. I didn't cry. That surprised me. I thought maybe, once it was all over, there'd be a flood. But it never came. Maybe because I knew this wasn't over. Maybe because for the first time in years, I wasn't holding someone else's mess. I opened my laptop, my real one with the worn-down spacebar and stickers peeling off the lid, and logged into the encrypted inbox. One new message from my SEC contact. Simple subject line, ready when you are. I typed the final note slowly, carefully. Attached the last annotated timeline, complete with backup files, voice memos, and the cell formulas they thought I'd never notice. I included internal emails, contract discrepancies, asset logs, the internal-only Slack channel I'd been silently recording for 6 months. Then I hit send, and just like that, the match was lit. I sat back in my chair, the old one with the cracked armrest and a squeak like a dying duck, and listened to the silence of my apartment. No pings, no meetings, no fake laughing at product managers who still didn't know how to spell compliance. The world kept moving. Cars outside, someone's dog barking, distant hum of a delivery truck. All so normal, and yet something had shifted. I wasn't scared anymore, or tired, or trapped in a cycle of pretending I didn't see the house burning down while the arsonists handed out quarterly bonuses. Now, I was the fire alarm. Now, I was the thing they didn't factor in. They thought I'd walk out and vanish, that I'd take my severance and find a quiet job at some other soul-sucking company with better coffee and fewer lawsuits. They forgot what I had. Access, memory, documentation, patterns, a habit of saving everything, and a very bored, very motivated SEC contact who had just received a 6-part series in corporate self-destruction. No, I wasn't done. I was detonating, quietly, precisely, and every piece I'd planted was about to go off. At exactly 2:17 p.m., 5 hours and 3 minutes after I handed over my badge and walked out into the fall air, the company's stock stopped trading. Like that, just froze. No warning, no explanation. The little green arrow on the live ticker curled in on itself and vanished, replaced by a dull gray hyphen. CNBC ran a breaking news banner less than 2 minutes later. SEC investigating tech firms for financial misconduct, tied to internal whistleblower. The ticker scrolled slowly beneath a still frame of the founder smiling at a tech summit last year, right before he told a room full of Stanford MBAs that compliance is just the speed bump on the way to innovation. You could almost hear the punctuation slap him in the face. By 2:35, every exec was off Slack. The internal ops channel was dead silent, except for a single message from the CTO. Does anyone know what this is about? No one replied. Not because they didn't know, because they knew. Board members started popping into calendars like mold after a flood. An emergency, all hands got thrown on everyone's schedule for 4 p.m. sharp. I wasn't invited, obviously. But one of my old colleagues, Lauren, from procurement, texted me a blurry screenshot from inside the meeting room. CEO pacing. Legal counsel, red in the face. A printed article from Bloomberg on the table, the headline so aggressive it looked fake. Whistleblower at tech firm X may have exposed multi-year financial fraud. I smiled without meaning to. It wasn't joy, it was release. Like a muscle I didn't know I'd been clenching for months finally went slack. And then my phone started buzzing. Tom, twice. First as a call, then as a voicemail. No text. No apology. Just that pathetic reach a cornered man makes when the floor drops out from under him and he realizes the paper trail leads straight to his desk drawer. I didn't answer. Didn't even listen. He could scream into the void all he wanted. I wasn't his janitor anymore. Let him mop up the lies with his performance reviews and bonus memos. Back on LinkedIn, news was already spreading. Anonymous accounts posting vague subtweets. Reddit thread popped up in r/tech snark, which fintech just got caught inflating revenue pre-IPO. Someone replied, check SEC filings. Starts with a T, ends with hope you lawyered up. By 3:10 p.m., legal had locked access to the internal audit folders. Too late. I'd already scraped, tagged, timestamped, and duplicated every file worth keeping. They could lock the vault, but the diamonds were gone. Someone from IT tried to deactivate my old login credentials. Didn't matter. I hadn't used them in weeks. Everything that mattered was stored off-network, encrypted, and sitting somewhere far beyond their little sandbox of control. Another Slack ping from Lauren. HR is in meltdown. Someone said you had a burner. Is it true? I didn't reply. Let them guess. Let them spin stories in that soundproof conference room, while legal scrambles for a scapegoat, and the CEO starts calling every VC contact he ever ghosted. The silence I gave them was louder than any confession. They had fired the one person who actually knew where the bodies were buried, and then practically shoved her into the arms of a federal investigator. They thought I was some passive compliance drone. They thought they could smear me, delete me, replace me. What they didn't think was that I would strike first, and I hadn't even broken a sweat yet. By Thursday morning, Tom was gone. Administrative leave pending internal review, the memo said. No signature. Just a blank-eyed HR announcement sandwiched between an expired bagel reminder and someone asking who took the last HDMI cable from the supply closet. No one even used the word fired. They were too scared. Like if they said it out loud, would summon another SEC agent through the air vents. I heard about it before it hit Slack. Lauren texted me again, this time just a single line. You snapped his neck and didn't even look back. The next domino fell an hour later when the CFO went on Bloomberg. Not in person, just a carefully worded, pre-recorded video, shot with enough blur that it looked like it was filmed on a microwave. He didn't deny anything. Didn't admit anything either, just used every corporate euphemism in the book. Clarifying internal practices, miscommunication between departments, unanticipated procedural redundancies. He might as well have said, we got caught cooking the books, but please don't pull your funding. The market didn't buy it. Neither did the investors. By noon, a new wave of panic washed over the company like cheap perfume. Internal emails leaked. Not from me, someone else. Few brave souls who realized the ship was sinking and decided to light a few fires on their way out. First came the invoices. Side-by-side screenshots, same dollar amounts, different vendors, identical formatting. Then came the Slack threads, time-stamped, watermarked, and forwarded in anonymous bursts. One showed a VP joking, hey, let's sprinkle in some creative math to hit that MRR curve winking face. Another said, we reclassify the Malta payments as employee enrichment. Lol, LOL indeed. By 3 p.m., the internal investigation that had started as a closed-door HR project was now a multi-agency circus. The FBI Financial Crimes Unit was reportedly asking questions. Not just the SEC, not just the IRS, all of them. The IPO postponed, indefinitely. That word echoed through Slack like a death rattle. Indefinitely. As in, maybe never. That beachfront condo the CRO just put a down payment on. Not happening. As in, the founder's exit strategy just got flushed with the rest of the toxic sludge. People panicked. Stock options became punchlines. Recruiters' inboxes exploded. Senior leadership went into bunker mode. No emails, no Zooms, just silence. Like ghosts in a machine built out of bravado and unpaid invoices. And me, I went for a walk. Not for revenge. Not to gloat, just to breathe. Because for the first time in what felt like a decade, I wasn't holding my breath. I wasn't waiting for someone to notice the mess and hand it to me with a smile and a deadline. I had handed them the mess, and they were choking on it. My phone buzzed again. Another unknown number, probably legal, or Tom, or the CEO trying to rebuild the relationship in a last-ditch attempt to make me go away. I let it ring. They didn't own my time anymore. Didn't own me. There's a power in silence they never understood. They thought the loudest person in the room wins. The one with the microphone, the spotlight, the board seat. But silence, true silence, backed by hard data and strategic timing, it's a goddamn wrecking ball, and it had just made impact. I checked my email. My SEC contact had sent me a thumbs-up emoji. Just that. No subject line. No attached files. Just a digital wink across the war zone. I laughed out loud. On a street corner in a city that had no idea it was witnessing a funeral for a fake empire. And as I stood there, watching people rush past me on their way to somewhere safe, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not revenge, not even relief, control. My voice had always been there. They were just too busy silencing themselves to hear it. Well, they were listening now, and I wasn't done yet. The report dropped at 6:42 a.m. Eastern Time. I was halfway through brewing coffee when my phone lit up with a news alert that said everything and nothing all at once. SEC filing hash 22 to 3798. Whistleblower disclosures from internal compliance officer. That was me. The filing didn't name me directly. It didn't need to. Anyone on the inside, anyone who'd worked in that building, sat through those all hands where we all clapped for fake numbers and bloated graphs, they knew. Was the breadcrumb trail I'd left behind, dressed in spreadsheets and Slack threads, coded inside formula cells and audit logs. It was my voice in a language only corporate liars could understand. By 7:03, someone on Reddit posted a photo of a crumpled termination letter found in the office recycling bin. It had my name, my start date, my end date, stamped and signed by HR with a smug little policy violation reason tacked to the bottom like a scarlet letter. The post title? This is who brought down tech firm X. She deserves a goddamn monument. Within an hour, it had 8,000 upvotes and a custom flair, the Compliance Avenger. LinkedIn blew up next. A dozen ex-colleagues messaged me. Some were stunned, some apologetic, some just wanted to say thank you. The ones who stayed silent were the ones still hoping the CEO would call them into the war room and hand them a title bump for loyalty. Good luck with that, because by 9 a.m., the company's value had dropped 43%. 43%. Overnight, shareholders rioted, not metaphorically. They showed up. Outside headquarters, on social media, at investor forums. One posted a furious thread detailing how he mortgaged his second home banking on the IPO. He told us the books were clean, he wrote. Turns out, the books were written in crayon. Then came the press conference. It was hastily thrown together in a co-working space that looked more like a hostage den than a billion-dollar tech company's PR platform. The CEO, once smug, cocky, dripping with disruption, stood behind a wobbly podium, the mic feed cutting in and out. His hands shook. His tie was crooked, looked like a kid caught spray painting lies onto a burning billboard. A reporter raised her hand. Voice calm, surgical. Mr. Dahl, when did you first become aware of the allegations outlined in SEC filing hash 22 to 3798? He stammered, blinked, looked down at a sheet of talking points that no longer mattered. We take all concerns seriously, and we have a process for internal evaluations, which unfortunately was not followed in this case. Translation, we ignored her. We tried to bury her. We thought she'd go quietly. I turned the volume down and watched him fold, not just him, the entire performance. This carefully constructed empire of jargon and backdated contracts. It was collapsing in real time, live-streamed on every business channel, tweeted by every finance bro who once drooled over our disruption metrics. And me? I was in sweatpants, curled up on the couch with a warm mug of coffee and a front-row seat to the reckoning. I pulled up my email. There it was. The offer letter from Rivet Pay, our former competitor. A better firm, smarter, and now, thanks to the chaos, a hell of a lot stronger. They didn't ask what happened, didn't pry. They just wrote, "We're impressed. Let us know when you're ready to lead." I stared at the accept offer button for a few seconds, not because I was hesitant, because I wanted to savor it. One last time, I glanced back at the frozen CNBC screen, where the CEO was now being drowned out by a room full of reporters shouting follow-ups. Then I clicked, accept. The laptop screen glowed. Outside, a breeze swept through the city, tugging at yesterday's headlines like ash on the wind. And I smiled, not because I won, but because they finally lost to someone they never saw coming. You're the real stars of the corporate jungle. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe, or I'll flick the switch on your old cubicle memories.